Hello and welcome to the Foxcatcher Review Show. My name's Julian Valance, joined as always up in Sydney. Don't know if it's dry or wet, but Nick Ashman, how are you, my friend? How was the weekend? You survived it?
I don't want to talk about survival.
Okay,
9 bets I had in total, 7 fourths.
Ooh.
3 of them were $20 or higher, or 4 of them were $20 or higher, and the combined margin between third and fourth for those 4 horses, $20 or higher, was less than half a length.
It's real proper sick behaviour when you've gone in and actually investigated all that in terms of the margins. Like, I know that we have a different life when you go through and you're a punter and you just, like, your brain is broken and we function on different levels, but that is just the epitome of just proper broken brain stuff when you're going through and looking at the margins of those beaten horses from third to fourth. Willaidow, or whatever its name was, it looked like it just was always going to run third. It was always going to run third, and then it just wasn't going to run third at the last 50.
And it was a little chance at the top of the straight. They came down the turn and Jace Collar's coming out, and I'm like, oh, God, you've got one, brother. You've done it. You've done it. I'm like this, you know.
Yeah, well, I started marching around. I was watching on the deck at home, and I started charging around, going, "I think he's found this." And then I was just like,
and then I could tell,
and it's going to run third, and I'm like, no, it's not going to run third.
And he didn't know until about 5 minutes to go. I was like, no, it was just horrible, and that was the last bet of the day for me. I had all these other things that came out anyway, so to answer your question, it's been a really tough weekend. And
I actually forgot the question. I forgot the question now. So,
and the worst is when you're giving those tips out to friends and people that you know, and then your phone goes off. Yeah. Oh, you had an unlucky day today.
Yeah,
or,
I know.
Oh, mate, just checking the results. What happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
Face
palm emoji gets sent usually, cry emoji, and it's like, I know, I'm aware.
Oh, it's just horrible. Oh, mate, you're a bit unlucky. Oh, thanks. I missed the race.
I didn't know. I was going to watch the replay tonight and just see how I went. Anyway, track intel, mate. Let's start. Randwick. Rail out 10 metres, 1,600 to the winning post. Out 7 metres the remainder. The track was heavy throughout the day. Intel, bang on, my friend.
Yeah, it was really good, wasn't it? Intel there in Doomben was just great on Saturday. So we forecasted lanes 4 to 8, just through the middle would be the place to be. Through the middle was the place to be. 6 of the 10 winners are in lanes 4, 5 or 6. Now, just late in the day, they started coming a bit wider again, and that's because that track really got chopped out, Julesy. I don't know if you could see, but the raw times really pulled up late. We're going to talk about who's in the doghouse in a moment. It's one of the slowest last 400, 200s I've just about seen. But, yeah, through the middle was the play for the day. Just be careful with this meeting going forward. There's a race 8. They came home in 27.42 for the last 400 metres. There were some horses out there on Saturday at Randwick that would have been doing it real tough, and I'd just be a bit careful about backing too many horses coming out of it.
I think this is a really good point because when I looked at the standards through what I have, which wouldn't be as sharp as yours in New South Wales, they were nowhere near it even for a heavy track, and I was like, this is bad. This is going to be really hard to rate now going forward, and these horses coming off this, like, unless you're going to get bogged for the next 3 or 4 weeks in Sydney, which I don't know if you are, then you're bang on right. You got to be really careful about backing any of these coming out, even if they were really impressive to the eye, because you'd think they would have, this would have knocked the stuffing out of them no matter where they were, I think, in the run.
Yeah, I think so, mate. And I'm just going to be real cautious.
Yep.
That said, and you just touched on it then, I just wanted to put one caveat on, is that there'll be some horses that come out of races that went terrible. But if they pull up okay and they train on and they find a dry track, the market could miss them because it could bin them based on these runs. Because as you said, most of these horses went poorly versus standard time on Saturday. I'm happy just to forgive them all, but I'm also kind of binning them all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the market will dictate that a little bit too. So the ones you might want to lean into. So there might be something there. Anyway, that was the track intel this week for Randwick. Let's get to the hen house. As you've sort of said off the top, mate, you're going to be really careful with this, but you have identified one race that you think maybe we can keep in our back pocket.
Yeah, I think the 3-year-old race, race 4, this was always going to be one that we wanted to keep a bit of an eye on. Just with, the 3-year-olds, this time of year, I think is a really good time to watch the staying 3-year-olds, because the ones that start popping up now could be your Cups contenders in the spring. Now, I'm not saying any of these horses in race 4 are Cups contenders, but I just wanted to touch on Let's Fly for Richard and Will Friedman. Just seems to be picking up big time here. Wins by the best part of 6 lengths on a really wet track. So first thing I want to point out is, even though this horse had a massive SP, it was also the first time it got onto an absolute bottomless track like this one here. It had raced on a heavy 8 earlier this preparation, but nothing like the one we had on Saturday. So it's now a horse that we want to follow big time on really rain-affected tracks. But just overall time here, they'll, close to a full second inside standard time. They went out quick. They came home even quicker, Jules. And as you and I know, that's a really good thing to follow going forward. The horse that I backed in the race, which wasn't in the set because I was told that she was coming out, was Proven Thoroughbreds horse Elavina. They were originally going to keep her for another day, and then they made the late call on Saturday morning to run her when she gained a start. Now, she was pretty good. She was the only horse out of the race other than the winner that I really want to follow. I know they thought they could try and get her into a Queensland Oaks. That won't be the case, but she's a nice little staying filly to keep an eye on as the sort of the next few weeks or months tick over.
Beautiful. That's the hen house for Randwick on a tough day. Doghouse, again, we want to probably just tread a little bit carefully, but you did identify a race that you think the market just might spit out the next time these horses run around?
Well, how's this? Race 8 won by Hollywood Hero, benchmark 94 over 1,600 metres. They went through the first 1,000 metres about a length faster than average. So, you're talking about maybe less than quarter of a second inside standard, as you'd say. They've come home their last 600 metres as a field 14 lengths below, or the best part of. So the overall time here was 13 lengths below standard. I don't know. As I said, I'm not going to read into that number too much, but just looking at the shape, they've gone out a bit above and they've come home right below. I just think, even looking at what else unfolded on the day, this is a pretty poor race. So Hollywood Hero, you can have that race, but I won't be touching anything coming out of it in the next run. That's
a good point. So you'd think the market will definitely spit out those horses next start. As you said, that was the Doghouse. Hits and misses here, mate. So we've got the list here of these horses that have been well supported. And this is a day really where they might have been looking for wet trackers in particular, or horses that were suited to these conditions. So again, we're going to have to tread carefully, but maybe you might be able to just pick. We've got the list there on screen there. You might be able to just pick out one or two that you think might actually be beneficial to the punters, because I think if we went through all of them, it's probably going to be, it was the best wet tracker, or it was, hard fit, that kind of scenario. Maybe ones that you think, well, there might be something in this form that we can see again, whether it's not this prep or next prep with these horses. One or two of them, mate, in this list?
Well, I think Agarwood, the horse that won the first race. Now, the track didn't really suit horses. He's a front-running horse, part of Waterhouse and Botside, a team. He stuck to the inside part of the track. It was definitely better to be a little bit away from the inside. He didn't have to be completely off rail. I just think whilst these tracks are really wet, he's one that we can follow. I should say. She won pretty comfortably on debut by 2.5 lengths, and then she's won by the best part of 2.5 again on Saturday. So she's elevated her rating. She's going really well. I want to follow her going forward. And the other one was Spioni for Team Hawks. She won race 9, which is a 1,400 metre contest. Overall time, again, I'm not reading into it too much. It was nothing flash, but it was a race that was a bit slower to start with and a bit faster late. The thing for her is that she was only having she was having a third run back, only having her 5th run of her career. She's now put 3 wins down. She's won on top of the ground at Pakenham, first up, down your way, this preparation. Now she's won on a heavy 9 over 1,400 metres. So she's just showing a little bit of versatility. And because she was so dominant, good late splits, good strong through the line on Saturday, I want to pop her in the black book as well and keep an eye out for her going forward.
That's good. That's Spioni. I've got a feeling it might have won on debut or its second start at Moonee Valley in a maiden, I reckon, and I've got that number going really big, so I was always interested to see if it would go on with it. So it's good to see it has gone on with it. I like the fact that you're continuing to follow it, because there's definitely some numbers behind it for sure.
And he's owned by Claire and Jane Hawkes. So for those that don't know, Claire is Michael's wife and Jane is Wayne's wife. So no doubt Jane will be looking for every pick-me-up she can get. Hello, Wayne. Love you, brother.
That's the hits and misses this week from the PointsBet trading floor. All right, let's look at the Group 1 review here. So let's start with the track analysis of Doomben. We're out 2 metres the entire circuit for the Doomben Cup meeting. It was a soft 5 throughout. We knew it was drying conditions throughout the week. The intel, again, pretty good here, mate.
Yeah, it was spot on again, Julesy. Going into the meeting, we said lanes 6 to 13 will provide the best ground. 6 of the 9 winners were in lanes 6 to 11. Nothing won inside lane 3 all day. So you just wanted to be a fraction away from that inside part of the track. In terms of positioning in the run, it was a bit kinder to leaders and it was oddly a bit kinder to the real back markers as well. So last week you sort of wanted to be forward of midfield but not necessarily leading. This week you could lead and you could actually come from well off the pace. We had 4 winners come from 3 lengths or more off the speed at the 600-metre mark. Just couple of emails or messages coming through during the week. The reason why we use 3 lengths at the 600-metre mark, you've got to pick a mark. And I think that's probably a good guide as to whether or not you're on pace or not. In terms of anything else, it was in that soft range just on Saturday as well. So in terms of are we going to be forgiving for anyone, look, anything that stuck hard to the fence maybe. But I think most horses got their chance at doing it on Saturday. It played pretty true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we go away from Doomben now for their carnival. We head up to Eagle Farm, obviously, for the Queensland Derby and the Kingsford Smith Cup, I think, are the next for next Saturday, Nico. So we'll have to get your intel for that. Talking on the Doomben Cup, the winner was Antino. Time's gone well inside standard time here. 1 1/3. I've got a second inside standard time. So they've gone at a really good clip. The last 400, 200, understandably, when they're that well inside standard, is pretty a little bit soft compared to the rest of the day. But he's gone brilliantly, hasn't he? And this is a really interesting horse for me, Antino, because we've seen him here. I mean, this time last year, he was running in the 1,400-metre Stradbroke, right? And now all of a sudden we're seeing him develop into this 2,000-metre horse. But we know Antino. He's been around for a few years. But we haven't seen him at this distant range enough that he could continually improve as a 2,000-metre horse. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later at the end of the show. At his ability and how far he can get. But just in terms of his performance on Saturday, I thought was outstanding. And I think it creates a really good platform for him to roll into the spring.
100% agree with you. So when we're doing ratings, there's 2 things we look for, times, margins. Fast time coupled with a big margin tells you that you can trust the data.
Yep.
When I say trust the data, Jules, just for those not sure what we mean by that, there's quite often an outlier in a horse's form, a number that they went to that they've never got back near. Now, there could be a whole host of reasons for that, but until we see it again, we don't trust it. What makes you trust a figure is if there's a big margin. If you've got 4 or 5 horses hidden a line within a length of each other and they've gone through the roof, they're rated better than Winks, you know your data's probably not real right. So just want to touch on that. What Antino's done in his last 2 starts is he's absolutely flogged them in both races, which you need to do because they are the B graders compared to our absolute A graders. And he's run fast time doing so. I think the presence of Pride of Jenny is really good for Antino because having that fast tempo to follow, I think really suits him. We've seen that even when he was running over those 1,400-metre races. But I think the big question now becomes, and as you said, we'll touch on it a bit later, is can he now take this great 2,000-metre form into the spring? The one thing I'll leave you with now before we circle back to it later is he's only got to this distance range, this preparation.
Yeah.
So we can only judge him off what we're seeing right now. And what we're seeing right now is outside of Via Sistina, I think he's probably close to the best 2,000-metre horse in the country.
Yeah, I think you're probably right from an older point of view, and it's just whether you want to stick up for the 3-year-old fillies and where they end up coming, Treasure the Moment, Aliana, and those kinds of horses that you know might continually progress as 4-year-old mares. But 100% as the older horses, he is definitely the number 2 seed, and we'll talk about that very, very shortly. That was the Doomben Cup. Let's get to In the Fox's Den. You've got one horse that you want to identify. As you said, this is probably a little bit of a tricky day, so we've got to be careful. You've got one horse for us?
Yeah, so the reason why we've just gone real low here, first of all, as I said, Randwick, no good. I just want to leave that meeting alone. Doomben, we now shift to Eagle Farm. So you've got to be careful finding good performances at Doomben and saying, oh, I want to follow this horse. If anything, right now we're looking for horses that didn't perform that well at Doomben. That would go, yeah, but you're an Eagle Farm horse.
Yes.
So the one that I've got for you this week, it's a little bit off Broadway, as you'd say, my man,
yes,
Julian.
Yes.
It comes out of race 6, the Magic Millions mile. Now, the winner of that race was that Putrid Dinius or whatever its name is, the Waterhouse and Bott stable. By the way, Waterhouse and Bott striking at close to 30% on their last 100 or 50.
Okay.
Profit exceeding market expectations by nearly 60% during this time.
Okay.
They are airborne. It was Bjorn Baker
at
the start of the year. It's now Gay and Adrian.
Yep.
But this thing, Little Mix is its name. It finished 10th in that race for Robin Annabelle Archibald. And what I liked about her was that she was first up. She had the best last 1,200 metres for the day, the second fastest last 200 metres for the day, and she gets out to sort of beyond 2,000 metres. I don't know if the Brisbane Cup comes around too quick for her.
Yeah.
But whatever's going on there, the stable's clearly got a plan for her to win a stakes race. They've tried to have a crack at a couple of stakes races previously. So I reckon just keep an eye on her. There was a bit to like. She was a real hidden run. And I think given her racing pattern of getting back and needs a bit of room to move, she's going to be a big improver at Eagle Farm in the next 3 weeks.
Like that. And you're definitely going to get a price about that horse. Indeed. That's in the Fox's Den. All right, through the line. We're nearly through this show here, Nico. I just want to talk about there's been a bit of the narrative. The comparison has come straight away. Antino, a very impressive winner of the Doomben Cup on Saturday. The margins, the time's not going to clock. The clock's not going to lie. Well inside standard. The comparison now comes, can he be a real, true competitor to Via Sistina? And let's just use the starting point as the Cox Plate. What do you think about that?
Well, look, the hard thing for him is at this point in time, he's an inferior horse off his figures. And the hard thing is that what he needs to show his absolute best is exactly what brings out the best in Via Sistina, and that's a brutal tempo. We've seen it at his last 2 starts. Even as a younger horse, Jules, as a horse racing over shorter trips, he needs that fast tempo. He's not a dasher. He just keeps coming. And she's a bit like that as well. She might have a bit more dash than him, the mare. So, but he's going the right way. He gets into the spring probably with that little bit of residual fitness. I'll be interested to see what Tony Gollan does. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'll be interested to see what Tony Gollan does from a placement point of view, because I would think that Chris Waller's a creature of habit. You can probably look at what he's going to do. He's going to go Turnbull into the Cox Plate. I'd probably go, okay, sweet. I'm going to go Caulfield Stakes. I'll have a run within 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks. And if it is a brutal tempo, it might just have me a little bit more set up. But that said, she can go and do 5 laps of Moonee Valley on the Tuesday morning and still win a Cox Plate. So good luck.
Yeah, on the quick 4-day backup, it's a great recipe.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
What did you think? What were your thoughts
so
there?
This is the interesting thing, is that he's gone great, and then I went back and looked at his numbers from the prep and then his overall numbers, throughout, including the Toorak and that alike, and then compared it to Via Sistina. And we speak about this a lot. The Via Sistina Cox Plate sits there at an island and she might not ever get back there, and that's fine. But the market's always going to anchor her to that anyway. So she's always going to start a pronounced favourite versus Antino in every race, because that number is the number that the Smarties want to anchor her to. There's other numbers as well from the Turnbull and other races that she's won, the 2,000 metre Group 1s, that I think are still probably marginally superior to Antino. Marginally, not much. But then there's still that divide to the island, Via Sistina Island. So she's always going to have the market in her court. The one thing I go and I look at this and I go from a Cox Plate point of view, where Antino can get Via Sistina is this is a tired track that's about to be blown up. So they're not going to put a lot of work into it. This is going to be race 17 on the 2-day carnival at Moonee Valley on Cox Plate Day. And if, which we have in the past, get a really bogged track, then I think Antino gets its opportunity possibly to have a crack at Via Sistina. But I think if we're on a dry deck and everything's true and normal, then Via's going to be the clear one, and I wouldn't probably be able to push up for Antino too much. But horse racing, so much variables, and just the way where this track at Moonee Valley is going to be, and it's probably going to be the last time we ever see it like that. Who knows how it's going to play? It gives Antino an opportunity. I was driving to this show this morning and I was thinking about if I had Antino, what would I do? And I was exactly in your corner. I think the greatest futures bet you could have right now when they put the markets up shortly is that Might and Power Caulfield Stakes Antino. Because if I was in that camp, I would go, I want to be 2 weeks into the Cox Plate. And I don't want to go into the Turnbull because I'll get the full penalty because I've won a couple of Group 1s, as Via Sistina will. But I might as well just go into a weight for age race against usually, we've seen in the past, this race does fall off a cliff. And it just gives you, this was the traditional perfect lead up into the Cox Plate. It always had been for so many years until the Turnbull, they put some money behind it, became the set weight and penalty race that it is. So that's what I would do. And I think when the futures go up, and we'll do a show on the futures sort of in about a month's time, Nico, this would be the one that I think I would really attack with Antino because I think he probably starts, if he's just continues to do what he does, sub $2 in a race like this that's going to be a small field. And then he becomes the second elect in a Cox Plate. So that's how I looked at it between Antino and Via Sistina. But I love the way you're thinking in terms of the prep because that's how I would prep him as well.
Yeah, I think so. And you can afford to get there a week later than her with that residual fitness. So twisting now to something very different. You and I touched on this. I asked you a couple of weeks ago about the race callers that had been sacked from their position or let go. One of our old mates, Terry Bailey, was given the boot last week, or it looks like it anyway, by RV. And I see James Safaris as well, who I thought I always had a lot of time for JT, and I just thought he seemed like the next one to take over. What's going on down there? I mean, TB, look, first of all, he's a mate, right?
Yes.
But we get it. He's not the most accurate race caller of all time, but he brings theatre. And the bloke has a crack, and that's what you ask for quite often. He doesn't just say what he thinks you want to hear either, does he?
Yeah, he's brilliant in that role. And to be honest, I hope that they continue with the Tuesdays with Terry, and I don't know what they are. And behind the scenes, maybe Weird Foxcatcher will actively try and possibly pursue him because I think there's some merit in whatever he does. So who knows what goes on in RV? I mean, we've spoken about this a little bit. Like, it's hard to comprehend, to be honest. I mean, I think once you start getting the ball rolling with what's going on at that joint, then it's hard to stop it. So, some good people have been let go. I agree with your sentiments there on everyone that's been let go there. They're pretty talented, and TB in particular.
Benny Spall as well.
Yeah, TB in particular, I think, is going to be missed, I think, by a lot of people in that hosting role that he could sort of cut through. And, I think there's going to be a role out there for him possibly. So stay tuned.
Good.
Maybe.
Okay, good.
I got one for you. Won the last race at Doomben, and it now gets a golden ticket into the Stradbroke. How good is he? I see he's now sort of top of the pops for the Stradbroke, so it's not as if the market's missed him. He's not, he had to win that race. He wouldn't have got in probably from a rating perspective if he didn't win. Well, he did win. He's exempt now. The number's pretty good. He's right in the mix, isn't he? Yeah,
he is. And the key is, and I'll come back to you because you're our handicapping expert, is what's he get weight-wise? Yeah. It looked to me like he's sort of the minimum or pretty close to it. Is that how you're seeing it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So Giga Kick and Overpass have been nommed. So there's no weights out here at the moment, so nothing. So Giga Kick and Overpass have been nommed. So they go into the weight pool. So they're on 116. Overpass might be a little bit less after that failure, but Giga Kick's 116. I think they set it around about that. So if they're 116 and say they get 58 kilos, now there is a 50 minimum on the Stratty.
Okay.
I've got War Machine after winning on Saturday going to 105. He was 100.
Yep.
I reckon they give him 2.5 kilos, get him to 105. They could be lenient and give him 2 kilos, get him to 104. Either way, it probably sits at him at around 52.5. I reckon. Right. If I was to put my head on the block, I'd say he'll get 52.5 kilos. He might get maybe 52. I don't think he gets any less. And I'd be surprised if he got any more with Giga Kick and Overpass being in the race. But then that creates another one that I'll throw back to you because I can't see Blake Shing riding at 52.5. who then becomes the rider that you would want at that weight? Because I think no doubt the horse had plenty of ability. I think he's gone to another level on Saturday, and I think Blake would have added to that. You want to be able to keep that momentum going with a really good jockey. Who would be on your telephone list right now?
Well, Craig Williams is the obvious one. He ran second to Blake on Saturday. He rode that far too easy. But Blake's just, without no disrespect to Craig, but Blake's white hot at the moment, striking at 28% from his last 100 rides, beating market expectations during that period by 23%. You've got to keep in mind that the market typically finds him as well. We're not talking about an up-and-coming jockey. We're talking about one that's already proven. Craig, on the other hand, is not having his best period, and we know he bounces back. He's an absolute champion. But he's sitting at 14%, half the strike rate of Blake from his last 100 rides, and he's just failing to meet market expectations by around 5% during that time. So he's the obvious one, the lightweight, but he's probably not riding as well as he can, Craig. But it's 3 weeks until the Stratty, and as we know, plenty of time for a jockey to find form.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon there's two jockeys. I reckon Craig Williams is in the mix, and I reckon the other one probably, which wouldn't be that much left field, but I think at 52.5 kilos, I'd be ringing Jamie Malcolm as well. I'd be checking if she's interested in the ride, because I think one of those two, and you're probably, yes, no doubt, Blake's riding as good as anyone at the moment, but you're not going to be losing too much, if anything at all, at 52.5 kilos with Jamie or Craig. So in particular, probably maybe Jamie right now. So that's that for War Machine. We're done and dusted here, pal. I'll see you Thursday, Eagle Farm, 2 Group 1s. I think we go to Rosehill for New South Wales. I got Sandown Lakeside. It was Hillside this week, Lakeside this week. We'll keep rolling.
I got something for you as well. Remember my mate who part owns, I've got 2 mates in Prince Tycoon?
Yes.
Now, he ran at the Gold Coast on their Friday night, last Friday night. Ran second. Should have probably won.
Yeah.
Blake jumped off and said, speaking of Blake Shin, said to them, very, very good. They're going to back him up in the size produce, 1,400 metres this Saturday.
Okay.
And he's still double figures. So if this gets out in time, I know you like him. There's not a lot going to the race.
That's a bet. I know where I'm going right now. EBT. Thank you very much. That's good. See you, pal.
That's all I can do.
See you, mate. All right, punters. Ashman gone. Let's bring in the A-grader, Clint Hutchison Hutchi. How are you, mate? We missed you last week. We knew that the West Coast Eagle. We spoke about this on the show. That West Coast won. You celebrated.
Party time.
Celebrated into the night, into the day, and said, you know what? I'm not turning up. But good to have you back, mate. You're all right.
Never thought it'd happen. They've actually won a game.
Come back.
I was going to come back. You kicked off with an A grader. I don't think I've ever been an A grader at much in my life. So, but thanks for the compliment, Jules.
Yeah.
It's been a bit interesting week. Some good racing.
Yeah,
we had a bit go on overseas as well. The bubble beat the Dubai Honour in Hong Kong. The footy's up and about.
We'll get to that at the end of at the end of this. We'll get through this racing. We'll have some musings about the AFL because just our usual tradition there of just potting everything.
Sandown played pretty well though.
Did. Let's get to the track intel here. So, Sandown Hillside, out 3 metres the entire circuit. Soft 5, upgraded to a good 4 after race 5. I reckon the times indicated was probably just about close to a good 4 all the way throughout. I thought it raced really fairly. Now, I was quite critical on Thursday.
Were you? Why? I want to hear this.
The reason why I was critical was the program. Nothing else. I just think track managers then have to start second-guessing them when they've got a race on the Wednesday and the Saturday. And I went back through history and I was like, well, this has never happened. The Sandown have never had sort of the Wednesday into the Saturday at this time of the year. Could be different in spring when you got better conditions to help work with weather-wise. And I know we've had nice weather. But I just thought that Wednesday into the Saturday just started, the track managers are just thinking, okay, so do I need to water? Do I don't water? What do I do? And look, to be honest, I'm still neither here now or there about the Wednesday because it raced probably quite firm, but we always talk about liking fast tracks, so that's not for me. Absolutely. It was just more about what the hell are they going to be able to do to prepare this track for Saturday. They got it bang on right, but I still think my initial comment is I thought the programming was wrong. Forget about everything else. Just the programming of the Wednesday into the Saturday.
I agree
this time
because
of year is no good.
we were blessed with good weather and they've had a firm track, so it hasn't really impacted it. But what if it was a bog on Wednesday? Really rain affected. How would that affect Saturday? Don't have enough. We've got a few tracks in Victoria, you know.
We've got a few. We
There's a
seem to have
few
a
tracks
few.
there
There's a few around. So usually like the Wednesday might have been at I think last year it was at Bendigo and then they raced the Sandown Hillside on the Saturday. So my point was just the programming at RV. I'm not talking about MRC here. RV programming. Mm-hmm. Why was it Wednesday to Saturday?
Yeah.
So that was my
That's a good question. It's a good question. You'd think that you'd be able to split them up. But fortunately,
no excuses. No, they did a great job. So well done to them.
I think, and getting back to Saturday as well, in terms of across the track, there was a pretty strong sort of tailwind there. They were running some good times, but the track looked great and just like they were getting their toe a little bit. So
times indicated that it was all good, like it was more or less good throughout. And we'll sort of start with that actually as well when we get to our hen house because the races we liked were sort of early doors. So, track raced well. Well done to the team there at the MRC. All right, hen house here. Hutch, you wanted to include this one straight off the top. It was race one. It was won by Miss Olay. 3/4 of a second inside standard time. The last 400, 200, very good compared to the rest of the day. This horse was well backed. It sort of had one run. It was heavily supported at Warrnambool. Maybe didn't get through that ground. They wanted to back it again. They went out really quick in this race. Now, the favourite Saluted's gone great and ran second. This horse obviously has got over the top of it. But there was a horse that put a fair bit of pressure on Saluted.
Or something, I think it was called. It really applied the pressure there, and they've gone very hard. This race, now we have been the bashers of the 2-year-olds, haven't we?
You have.
But you know what? Late in the season,
we found a few lately.
There have been a few lately that you're going, you know what? There's a few here that we can follow in the spring, and this is another race, albeit a Saturday off-season, Sandown. They have run good time. They ran better time than the following race, which has gone rated pretty well.
Yep.
I thought Saluted was enormous, being pressured in the lead. It was in that awful spot.
It really was.
Second, just, in second, getting pressured. Of course, the horse that pressured it drops out, and Miss Olay was very good. Market 2, good. I couldn't believe Saluted wasn't favourite, and then afterwards you just got to tip your hat to the punters out there, and they played it very well. But I'll be trusting the form.
Yes.
And there was a debutant in the race. It's run well. It's run fourth, so trust this race.
Yeah, if they continue to go through the prep, some might pull up stumps and say, hey, we can have a crack at the spring now. You probably want to pull up stumps now, but anything coming out of that race that was close by, I think we can follow with confidence, as you say.
Well, there'll be some very good 3-year-old sprinters out of this race. I'll be following it early spring.
All right, so that's race 1 just to kick off our hen house punters. Then we go to race 2, won by Harry Got Styles. 1/3 of a second inside standard time, as you said, Hutch. The first race has gone quicker, but I love the last 400, 200 of this race. 21.97, 11.33, best of the day by far. Again, I think this is a race we can follow with a bit of confidence.
What did you notice about this race, Jules?
What did I notice about this race?
You know, when I brought up a couple of weeks ago about just shifting off and just leaving.
Yes. Yeah, leaving. Yeah, they did, didn't they? It's perfect, wasn't
it?
Hello. The whistle was blown.
Nothing wrong with the fence.
No.
We saw it later in the day. They were hard paint.
Yeah.
What is all that about?
Well, it is an interesting thing. We might have to do a bit of an expose.
There's been winners with it. Anyway, it was good, Harry. Back to 1,000. That's his go.
Yes.
I think it's a pretty handy little race. I think the way the race was run, it, even compared to the 2-year-olds, went out harder over the same track and trip. I thought the runner-up was very good.
Yes. I think this is a race, because they haven't gone that hard, that I think there's going to be a bit of springboard from this. Yeah. And there might have been a couple of horses that weren't 1,000-metre horses either, and we might get to that a little bit later in the Fox's Den, that I think we can follow as they get to, say, 1,100 or 1,200. They'll just explode from this because it's not overly fast, but the last 400, 600 is monstrous, and usually they just explode from that the next start. So that's what we want to be with. The next race we want to be with as well, I thought, was race 3, won by a equal to standard time, but I thought the last 400, 200 was pretty good. And I just thought this was a race around this time of the year. I reckon there's going to be plenty of winners to come out of it. This horse was just in the gun spot. It was given a beautiful ride. I think a few of its opponents, in particular probably Terra Lee, and I'll get to that a little bit later, in setting fire to it, were given a bit of a task. I think we can follow this race. Back? It felt like that.
Yeah.
It felt like, and I know it was a bit of a day for the apprentices, in particular maybe even Logan Bates, who I think rode a winner as well on the day. I thought in this instance, they got too far back on Terra.
So in this instance, do you think he's better off sort of being midfield without cover and just being that 2 or 3 lengths closer?
Yeah, the horse is like third up, so it's fit enough, I think, to be able to cop that. They haven't gone that fast, So, and that's the thing. Look, as we speak about this a lot, connections are probably adamant. It's an apprentice, so he's going to do what he's being told. No doubting that. This is not Craig Williams or Blake Shin who's going to say, I'm going to just take the bull by the horns and go, I'll do whatever I think I want to do. Maybe he's being told, you're just going to have to take your medicine here, be neutral and go back. And maybe that's the case. But then it's on the connection and it's on the training team that I just think you were too far back.
Yeah, that's a fair call. For me, the winner was very good.
Oh, yeah.
Put 3 on them. Tara Lee was a good run, but yeah, I think that the right
I'm not saying that the other horse beats it.
Yeah,
and by
no, they didn't get the tactics.
Just
right
don't think it was afforded every possible chance to produce its best.
Yeah, we see that a bit, don't we, when they draw wide and go back?
Yeah,
so you kind of got to factor it in. It's our own
100%.
fault, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's from a map perspective. Map perspective, and really well supported. Like it's ready to rock and roll that horse. Yeah. So now and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So we probably might pull up stumps with it, but we'll say that the race I think has gone well. I think there's a bit of confidence there. That's the hen house this week for Sandown. Doghouse here. We've got a couple here, Hutch. I'll kick us off. Race 5, won by Suances. Half a second outside standard time. Last 400, 200, pretty soft, 11.98. Now, the winner does come home 11.64. It's come from last. I just think there's not many margins here.
What about the second horse? Was it Changing Colours?
Changing Colours, yeah.
Were you on it?
No, I wasn't. And look, I had a very robust discussion with the man that you would know who was part of the Foxcatcher team for a long time until he decided to become Voldemort. And he was adamant the horse is not a dog or a cat or a milk drinker and all those kinds of things, and just thought this would be its race. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, it tried its hard. Like it tried its best. There's no doubt. It's got no dog in it.
I was very critical of it before that because I thought the run at the Heath. I'm like, no, you had that race shot to pieces and it didn't want to go through with it. And actually, I think on Saturday, Changing Colours knuckled down and kept trying it. Yeah. But then again, it's from second.
I know. And this is the thing. You look at it and you go, oh, well, no, everyone's going to keep throwing. So you just look at the race book and go, nah, it's a dog. It's not. But I will say, I thought that was its opportunity. So now when you get your opportunities sometimes in the prep, I thought that was the one. And we haven't got the race going that well at all. So a bit of a worry as well.
That's a worry.
And I spoke to this about Voldemort about this. It's like the 320 was sitting there and he took the 320 and I was like, I just can't take it. I said, I know it's going to start shorter. I know it's going to start this 215, 220.
But I don't want any part of it.
But I just can't be part of it. Yeah. Sometimes you go, I just took it because I beat the market and great. Yeah, well, you do that and you end up still living under a bridge. You got to get the actual win. But it did try. So it now confirms that, okay, that, maybe it's not as much as a dog as what I thought, but it's now going to be fifth up. It's still going to be a premium price you're going to have to pay for it, and it's coming out of a race that I think hasn't gone that good. So,
did Voldemort say, Harry Potter, you're too good once again?
Yeah, he did tip his hat, but then he also still said it was the right bet to have for him. So, as you know him very well, that he doesn't give up too much about him giving anyone a sort of a kick
a compliment.
No, correct, exactly. No, anyway, we think the race is a bit ordinary, so let's see what happens. The other race 6. Saban.
I don't want a part of this race.
1.5 seconds outside standard time. Now, the last 400, 200s come home okay, and this horse has come from off.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going to. They went that slow.
No margins here.
Margins. And some of the better runs and some of these stayers that have run home in some of the best sectionals of the day, and they've been legless in other preparations. Yeah. Great placement for Saban.
Yeah.
And looked the right race with no weight. It's a dash home. The weight kicked in. I'm not even convinced about Saban, to be honest.
No, this is the thing. So this was the one where we talk about this and we go, that was the opportunity for the prep. So maybe that was for Changing Colours. I think this was the one for this horse as well. Now, I thought at the time, the Thursday, we backed it and we said it would be on 50. I think he carried 51.
51 or 51 and a half.
So this was his opportunity. And now I don't think the race has gone that good. I don't want to follow him all the way through the prep. So sometimes they just get the one opportunity. I thought that was that horse's opportunity on Saturday. It delivered, but overall, I think the market sort of takes a set against this.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm really worried, to be honest. I'm worried about horses like Air Assault and Aaron Bay, who have been to a higher level and are pretty strong horses, but they've come back from Adelaide, and I thought they were both really plain.
I couldn't get my head around it, how bad. Aaron Bay is consistent. For me, Air Assault's a little bit hit and miss, but Aaron Bay was really poor.
Yeah. Really disappointing.
I don't know. There's something that I could be way off in this race, but it's too confusing.
Yeah.
And the better runs outside of the winner, I don't really want to be with because I haven't seen enough from them in the past either. And I'm not going to say, well, this horse. And there was a couple of them. I think was it Tempesty was one that ran on.
I'm going to put one actually into Fox's Den, but just because I reckon it was half a run or 3/4 of a run short on Saturday. Old Soul. I just thought now it gets to 2,000 metres, that camp actually explode third up.
Maybe.
But again, and I could be clutching at straws there with that horse.
Maybe.
But overall, the race junkie.
It's just I find it's literally just been like basically maybe 2.5 furlongs run home.
Yeah.
So you kind of get some funky things happen.
Yeah.
So
and which is really disappointing for horses like Air Assault and Aaron Bay, who are sort of sitting in the first 3 or 4 and usually love that kind of situation. They just monster their rivals. They're not anywhere near where their peaks have been in the past. So that's what I'm worried about with that race overall. That's the doghouse. Hits and misses, Hutch. So let's just quickly go through a couple of these and see whether we want to be with them. And we sort of touched on this horse from race 1, Miss Olay, $3.50 into $2.70. The market wanted to be with it on debut at Warrnambool. They missed there. They get it back here. We've spoken about it. You put it into the hen house. It's a horse we can follow with confidence.
Yeah, it was a very good performance from her. She's good. Follow her and follow the format of the race. The money was spot on. And it was a good effort from the punters, only on that one run. I mean, they followed the SB, but gee whiz, Saluted had done some good things. So too good for the punters.
Absolutely agree with that. That was actually a really interesting one from a market perspective, is that there was no real number for Miss Olay. But I know there was the big support. So it was almost like it was the street corner tip that you get, and it's really solid Thursdays and Fridays, but once it gets to race day, Saturday, it drifts out. Well, that street corner tip just continued to go and go
Got
and
some
go.
momentum.
Correct. And what you say is 100% correct. Saluted had good numbers that it should have held favouritism throughout betting.
Yeah.
But the avalanche for this was quite significant. So might be something in that. Race 3, Terra Lee, $5.50 into $3.10. We've spoken about this, that I think it just got into the wrong spot. But they've got to find the right race for it now because it's getting deeper into the prep. But I think if we put a senior jockey on, no disrespect, I think we can get a different result.
He might have been following instructions. Quick question. Terra Lee was $8 on Wednesday or whatever when they came out. I think most people could see that seemed very big.
Yeah.
So 8's into favourites. Aha 3 out to 4 as well, who was Aha seemed short enough.
Yeah.
Bringing the same form too.
Yeah, interesting. And that is an interesting point as well. So for that to happen, for this horse to just continually get the momentum to start B Cup favourite, especially with the apprentice on. So there's a bit in it, isn't it? This time of year, I think the market does seem to want to gravitate towards the apprentices.
There's a big difference between them to start with because if you liked
Yes.
If you liked one, you had to like the other. You knew that they had to be closer together.
You would have loved to be able to get the top fluck on both if you were playing early. If you got that early sort of Wednesday and you'd happy to play both pretty early and you say, well, I'm probably going to be pretty safe here.
You can trust them anyway.
Yeah, correct. Race 6, we've spoken about this race, Bold Soul. It was $10 into $4.40. It misses. I'm giving it a chance. Hutchi, you're on the fence and suggesting I don't like the race.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because I was against this horse, but market was just mad on it, accredited. $5 into $2.85. I know it was unlucky last start, second up here. I thought it had every possible chance in this race. I thought it was disappointing.
It was disappointing. I thought that was it Oscar's Fortune?
Yep.
He's been setting some pretty strong tempos in his races, and accredited couldn't handle it. It was gone at the 500. I thought.
Yeah,
it was disappointing, no doubt. Was it an excuse run off that speed potentially?
Okay.
I wouldn't back it next time. Yeah. I wasn't strong on the race, so I'm not sure.
Let's get to the last. This horse is just continually improving. Q's, $5.50 into $3.20 hits. Now, this is a good race. Horses like O2 Good, which we've got a big opinion of. This horse is just monstered it, to be honest. I mean, O2 Good's
had its chance. I think
100%.
O2 Good had every possible. The only thing was second up, maybe needed it again.
Yeah, I'm not going to drop off O2 Good. Whether I want to be with it next start, but I reckon fourth up will be the peak run somewhere. But this horse has just been a great prep. Yeah. Like numbers just keep increasing. Yep. And it's like, can't knock it. I love that the market wanted to be with it.
Little concern that Molly Nickers has sort of been a touch unlucky there. I mean, because for me, I'm a bit with her.
Yeah, well, I think with her, she's got a number in her, but when do you catch her? And that's exactly right. You can't. That's the hits and misses this week. Setting fire to it, Hutch. Identified race 3 here, and as we say, is the gates open. And I think when you see and you look at this, This is just from a perspective, and we spoke about this a little bit on the touch when we talked about the hen house this race. Aha puts itself into the great spot here.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, you're like, okay, this is probably, if it gets beat, well, probably never again for this horse. Terra Lee, they decided to go neutral from the gate, which is fine because that's their prerogative and that's what they want to do. But I think you knew your money was absolutely toast if you're on Terra Lee.
Where did you have it mapped?
Well, that's a very good point. I had it mapped there. But obviously, here's my point to this. 550 into 310. People obviously didn't have it mapped there.
Right.
Surely. I mean, I didn't back this horse. So,
Well, I think
from a market perspective, if you're 550 into 310, surely you haven't got it mapped there.
Well, I'm thinking like at the last start, it was back in the field as well at Caulfield.
Yeah.
So, and it was back in the field. And with even luck from that position, you'd have to say would have gone pretty close to winning or figured right there.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people would have been happy to take that price thinking she'll be somewhere off midfield.
Yeah.
Maybe not as far back as you mentioned. And it's an interesting one. I thought she'd be back in the field and I thought she'd be able to round them up. But
okay. So you were happy to have her that far back.
Not quite that far back, but I thought she'd be back there.
In comparison to the second pick? Because you knew
I didn't think Aha would be that close.
Yeah, and so and that's probably the point too is when you're looking at the race at say the 800.
Yeah,
you know this money's torched.
Yes,
because Aha is probably
there's
two
not
lengths
much between them, and you're given away a lot.
Yeah,
this race the tempo was good enough, probably a little steady at one stage, but once again I don't know. I tell you what, I watched it. When I watched the replay, I understand what you're saying about Terra Lee, but I think the winner, if they line up again against each other. The market was pretty accurate, and I don't think there'll be much between them again.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I'd be probably leaning towards Aha.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing. I give Terra Lee one more chance if they put, say, maybe a senior jockey, and that's no disrespect to the apprentice on, just maybe a horse that can, a jockey that can sit over it a bit and maybe get it to find a position early.
You've been very harsh on the 2-year-olds, and now the apprentices are coming
Not at all.
under the wrath.
And they had a good day too.
They're flying. And you know what? I'll give you some advice as well. It's winter. You know,
and this is the time.
This is their time to shine.
Absolutely. And we talk about this a lot, is that the market absolutely loves these horses when they're claiming and they claim under the minimum on wet tracks. They will just, just froth it. They absolutely froth it. So we'll be talking about it. We're not jumping off the apprentices at all. I'm just saying some horses just like a bit of mongrel over the top of them a little bit, just like to boss them around a bit. Absolutely. That will set a fire to it. In the Fox's Den here, Hutch, I'll kick us off because I've got 2 from Sandown, then I've got a 2 from left field, and then you've got one from left field as well. So I'll kick us off just from the 2 from Sandown. Dazzling Lucy was in that race, the 1,000-metre race won by Harry Got Styles. So it's not a 1,000-metre horse. I don't even think it's ran over 1,000 metres before. I've got the race going really well. I think it's a great platform now. We get to 1,200 metres. I want to be with Dazzling Lucy. Bold Soul, I just want to see it at 2,000 metres now. I know the race is a bit junky, but I like the fact that there was market support for it. I thought it'd probably be half a run short. I reckon it's ready to go now. And now 2 off Broadway. Gretham Bay is a horse that was a Singapore horse.
Oh.
First up, demolished him. I think it might have been Kilmore or something like that. Just went to the front. Again, I think it was over 1,000 metres. Probably not its go. I reckon 11 or 1,200 metres, it can keep winning. I've got it rating really big. And a horse called Dark Beneath. I think it just won a maiden. I think it can go on and do some damage as well in 64 grade, 70 grade, even something like that.
I'm glad you brought up the maidens, and I'm glad you brought up Kilmore because I've got one there that ran second called Frosted in Time with a smaller stable. McPherson.
Alicia
McPherson has it. Went forward, led up. They put 6 lengths on the third horse.
We like that.
They ran good time. And Frosted in Time's only had a handful of starts, so this is a horse that will just be winning.
Yes.
It was an outlier on the day. They've gone extremely well.
Yep.
And I'm trusting the number. I'm trusting the form. And because it's probably not with a big stable,
you know, get a price about it.
And it was a Tuesday. You might get in a similar sort of race.
Well, this is the thing. If it's with Kieran or someone like that, you're probably looking at in the red, 220 or something next start.
Yeah.
You just might get something like $4 next start about a horse that should be 6 to 4.
I mean, they're not that many midweeks, Sandown Maidens, for example, but if it went there, I'd be backing it off the back of this run.
Yeah, good. That's positive. Frosted in Time.
Frosted in Time.
We are done here, Hutch, but we're not done overall because
No.
we just want to talk about another love of ours, and it's the AFL.
Before we get to the AFL,
Go on.
this week,
Yes.
a very important week. Now, you love your tennis.
I do. I actually just realised.
French Open.
I only knew it was on because I was in Channel 9 last night and it was on. I was like, oh, fuck, the
Right.
French Open's on.
Yeah. French Open. Now, who's your favourite tennis player ever?
Roger Federer.
Oh, God. I've asked you this before. You know when you ask someone a question,
Did you
they
think
say,
should I have said Rafael Nadal?
yes, of course you should have. Don't give me Roger. But anyway, so I thought you'd be up late, your late nights watching your French Open. But
I will say the French Open is pretty brutal to watch. Some of those rallies that they have, it can be torturous.
I like it. It's a great tournament, though, isn't it?
Any of those majors.
And
are
Rafa,
rippers.
what a beast. I mean, that will
What
never
did
be
he,
repeated.
11 times?
10 or 11. I don't
Yeah.
know what it was. It was a lot.
I think they gave him a bit of a
He was
a
certainly in
receptionist.
Roger's head when it came to the clay.
He ate clay.
Yeah.
And Roger just had none.
Nah,
on there.
he didn't
I'm
like
surprised that Roger actually did get a French. He did win one, but he got a favour done by, I think, Soderling beat Rafa in a quarter or a semi in that year. So allowed Fed to get through.
What I didn't realise, and we do this in other sports, but those conditions, dry, how much humidity, the ball, the actual court plays so much differently. But
absolutely. Well, even here for the Australian Open, players will come out and say from year to year, go, oh, it's so much faster, or it's so much slower, or whatever it might be for whatever. And
incredible,
it's amazing that you think, well, it's just the same.
So it's not just racing where we have these lanes,
the variables are everywhere.
Lanes and wind and all
Variables
that.
are
Now, back to the
everywhere.
footy.
Yes.
My kids aren't happy with your team, Geelong. The Cats got up and beat the Doggies.
They did. Now, you could easily say the Dogs should have won, which I can totally understand. But I think the Cats decided, well, we're not a team that like shootouts, but let's play the Bulldogs at what they love and let's have a shootout. And guess what? The Cats still beat them at their own bloody game. So that's my theory. I think they meet again in the finals. And a lot of people think, well, it'll be a different result because it'll obviously be at the MCG if they get that far. I just don't think Geelong will play into a shootout in the finals time. They'll play the way they like to play, defensive structure, and it won't be set up like a shootout. And that will be why the Cats won't get beaten by the Dogs in the finals. Let's just hope they never play them. It'd be a good grand final, though. I'd like that one more than, say, a Gold Coast versus Brisbane grand final. That could be a chance.
That will be interesting. I'll tell you what, though, Dan, it's the first time I've been to GMHJ.
Yeah, what did you think?
So the whistle seemed to blow the Cats' way a lot.
That's all you got for me. Nothing about the actual crowd.
26-12.
Yeah. Well, we've said it.
Man.
We've talked about this every week. Anyone that gets invested in this AFL game that thinks the AFL give a crap about what you think is laughable.
Yeah.
They don't invest in anything like the refereeing. They don't invest in anything like technology. It's WWE. They just want people talking about how hideous their game is being refereed.
One other question. With Geelong going forward, what are the sights this year? Like, are we talking grand final?
No. They put themselves into a position to be top four, which I think they'll do again, which we know. So I think the market suggests that. And then they will probably, what the best thing for them would be probably get that first final against Gold Coast and maybe get it down at GMHBA. And then they'll have to play a prelim at the MCG and it probably be against the Collingwood or it could be against a Brisbane. And we saw last year that Brisbane, are pretty good at the MCG. And we saw it on Saturday as well because they monstered the Hawks, who I reckon are getting beaten to their depth, and we're seeing their half rat power.
It's getting interesting, though. It's a good year.
It is. We're only round 11 in, so, we've got another 13, 14 rounds. It's a long year. So we're not even halfway, but we've clearly got a pronounced favourite in the Pies. Do you believe that?
It's hard to knock them, isn't it?
It is.
But
they're strong.
Particularly when they can have half their team out and still beat most teams.
That's the key.
That's pretty impressive.
And we're seeing with other teams that they don't have the depth. When they're playing 31, 32 players consistently, see it with Port Adelaide. So Port Adelaide played 35 players this year. They're non-competitive, especially in the second half. They've given up nearly 300 points in the second half. It's just mind-blowing. Yeah. They finished second last year. So there's just teams that just don't have the depth. Also, in the last 5 weeks have played 31 players. They're struggling because they don't have the depth.
I'm just loving these stats that you are a stat man.
I've been
watching you on the Furnace. I'm loving your work on the Furnace.
Hey, I've got one for you, the Furnace. This was brought up by James Hurd on the Furnace. What do you reckon about this one? You always say that I have some stupid theories. I'm not saying this is stupid either, and I know Hurdy would watch this flat out. He thinks there's a thing with Fremantle playing 120 games in the eastern states because it's actually only 11 o'clock and he thinks their body clock hasn't acclimatised. So they're 0-2 this year, right, in 120 games. Guess what they play this week? 120 against the Gold Coast Suns up on the Gold Coast. So it's actually Weet-Bix time for them really by their body clock. So in theory, Fremantle Fremantle will start very slowly. So there you go. First half maybe Gold Coast, and then they'll start to build into it, maybe. But I think they'll be 0-3 at 11 o'clock WA time. 120 games. What do you reckon about that?
It reminds me of your Olympic pool theory, where it was slightly deeper. Or
you know that they broke just about every record. That's why they couldn't break any of the records, except someone who came out, I think China or something, came out and broke a world record.
It is amazing. And just getting back to another point, that home ground advantage, it's got to be still the biggest thing in sport.
It is. No doubt it is. We could talk about AFL, and maybe we should do an AFL pod.
Well, I'm just, zero fact-based, 100% emotion, gut feel, and none of it relevant. So.
Spite as well. There's a lot of spite put into teams that I want to beat and teams I don't care about.
Exactly.
Thanks, mate. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
What are you really gambling with?
For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.